Hello listeners and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. In light of this week's crisis in the Ukraine, this is a special podcast on the events in Moscow and Kiev and the wider implications for European energy markets. What is Russia's game plan in Ukraine? What will it mean for gas flows in the short term and for EU dependence on Russian gas in the medium to long term? What are the alternatives? Can LNG bridge the gap? Will Germany potentially look at reopening some of its nuclear facilities? Can Europe accelerate its green transition? And will that keep the lights on? Helping me, Richard Sverrisson, to discuss the key issues is Georg Zachmann of Brussels-based think tank Bruegel. What will the current shocking invasion of Ukraine mean for Germany's relationship with Russia?
I think it's still early days. People were, I presume, hoping till the very last moment that what happened this morning would not happen. And we are very likely in a completely different geopolitical situation than we were a week ago. And I think there are things back on the table that haven't been on the table for many years. So we will discuss about complete stop of Russian energy supplies. I think that will be part of the conversation on the energy side. We will have to discuss on how we can support Ukraine in energy terms. There's a question about integrating Ukrainian electricity system in the European grid. And obviously, it all will depend on how this situation that this morning has started to unfold will play out. So where will Russian troops stop? And will it be a full-fledged occupation of Ukraine or which parts of it? So I think we will have to wait a few more days to understand better where we are standing here. But what one can already say is that the plans we have made on energy transition in Germany relying on Russian gas, they are not relevant anymore. We need to think about different plans.
That was going to be my next question, actually, Georg. So what does it mean then for German energy imports from Russia? Will they come to a full stop or, maybe not overnight, but certainly in the coming months or years? What's your view here?
The events will unfold potentially quite quickly. We are going to have these sanction debates. And what we all hear from the news is that SWIFT is on the table as one means of sanctioning. And it's relatively easy to imagine that counter sanctions from Russia and be them in the form of saying, okay, if you don't pay us anymore because SWIFT is not working, we're not sending you gas anymore, can very quickly happen. So that I would not exclude that gas flows to Europe from Russia would essentially stop in the next couple of hours. Mm-hmm. That could happen, but it also could not happen. So we are very in a very volatile situation here. And what this would imply for European gas demand supply balances in the short term, I think we are fine. Storages are some 30% full, and the winter is ending soon. So for this heating period, we should be through. There's a few challenges with getting gas to a bit of the more eastern places of the European Union, but that should be manageable if we pull together and if solidarity is exercised. The big challenge in such a scenario without Russian gas is it is unpredictable how long it will last. And we will need to refill storages ahead of the next winter. And the combination of the two, this uncertainty, that is very hard for commercial buyers of gas to kind of get a feeling for. And this massive amount of gas that we need to put in storage ahead of the next winter is a very unfortunate combination. Just kind of back of the envelope, European gas storage is something like 1,000 terawatt hours, if I understand correctly. Filling them at current prices will cost about 80 billion euros. That has never cost as much before. And now which commercial company is going to put these corresponding sums on the table to buy gas and be potentially exposed to gas prices dropping in summer?
And what about Nord Stream 2, Georg? Is that now dead in the water? We've had some noises this week already putting it on hold and some talk of cancellation. Do you think it's now finished?
It was always the bargaining chip against any invasion. Now the invasion happened. So I don't see the events that would revitalize Nord Stream 2. I cannot imagine them, but never say no. The pipeline is there. It's seemingly filled with gas. The infrastructure is in place, and the political events are extremely chaotic and volatile, and we are on completely uncharted territory. So I don't know for sure. So not don't come back to me in 2 years and tell me, well, he said Nord Stream 2 was that. But everything that we can see today points to that there is no way that it's going online.
Would you agree that we were saved by LNG imports and mild weather? And how bad could things have got if we hadn't struck luck with in terms of the weather and the LNG imports?
I mean, we did some analysis in December last year in terms of whether we would be able to survive a full-scale disruption of gas supplies already then. And our analysis was that this would be extremely tight and depending on weather. And so weather was good, so that saved us essentially through the winter. And I think one can say chapeau to all those countries that built LNG terminals. They have been not very much utilized in many of the past years, but now they provide really the vital insurance for the European gas market.
A mild winter in Asia meant that LNG, in a sense, had to go to Europe. So we were lucky there, given La Nina had sort of forecasters anticipating a cold winter. Now, can we really expect LNG to replace future Russian gas supplies, given the events on Thursday morning, and gas becomes more of a weapon? Isn't that like hoping winters always stay mild, maybe?
The LNG import capability of Europe faces a couple of bottlenecks, of course. So, I mean, we have the existing terminal capacity, which we would estimate at something like 1,900 terawatt hours, and that would not be sufficient to fully replace Russian gas imports because we already use half of this capacity in normal times. So here we have one bottleneck. The second bottleneck is potentially how many ships would be available to bring all this gas 24/7 to the European Union. And the third bottleneck is how many gas can essentially be mobilized to be put on those ships, and what is the liquefaction capacity. So along the entire LNG chain, there's potential bottlenecks. And on top of that, a lot of the LNG that could be on the market, and my understanding is that the market is something like 5,000 terawatt hours globally, that a lot of this LNG is tied in long-term contracts to some buyers, and kind of taking this gas away from them will cost a lot of money or be impossible because those buyers also need this gas. And for sellers, it's not easy because, I mean, they can make a lot of money now on the potentially on the European market for a few months or maybe years. But in the medium term, Europe plans to wean itself off gas, which would mean that Europe is not like a market in which you can really invest. You kind of go there to earn some money quickly, but you're not going to invest on the prospect of selling LNG to Europe in 15 years, because if you follow the projections of the European Commission on EU gas demand, they are pointing downward relatively quickly.
All this points to a very precarious coming winter, then, in a way, Georg. I mean, you're saying, Europe is 40% of Europe's gas comes from Russia, 55% of Germany's comes from Russia. So, and then if you're saying it's very difficult for LNG to fill that gap, what are the alternatives here? It seems to be either prices skyrocket, which they probably will, or if the situation continues as you've illustrated here, what are the alternatives, or what's the possible winter scenario here, Georg?
If Russia would stop almost immediately to send gas, and I mean currently they are sending us some bit more than 2 billion cubic meters per week. If they stop, then getting through the next winter solely based on LNG will be difficult in the sense that we would not be able to meet the current demand levels with these volumes. So there will be a shortfall in the volumes of gas, I presume. I would kind of back of the envelope say that significantly more than half of the Russian gas can be replaced with LNG and some other import options, and maybe a bit higher domestic gas production, but not all of it. So there would be a gap, and this gap would have to be filled on the demand side. And now on the demand side, there is some flexibility for gas. High prices will force off demand. On the industrial side, we already see that, and the question is a bit how much more can be expected there, and how much more do we tolerate? Because we already see that some governments want to subsidize industrial energy demand, which is problematic in my view, but understandably politically. Then we have the power sector. I mean, in the power sector, you have a lot of flexibility because you can produce electricity with different things than natural gas. But all of the alternatives are not, there are some reasons why we wanted to use gas here and did not want to use more nuclear, and discussion will happen in Germany on that. The question on whether we burn more coal. Yes, we will burn more coal, but here, what happens with the emission trading system? But also, does Germany bring back its grid reserve into play and use those old lignite-fired power plants now to really produce at 8,000 full load hours electricity, and how quickly can massive kind of speeding up of the renewables make a dent into residual electricity demand. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And down on the household level, the challenge is that market-based solutions are very difficult here. I presume that some communication exercise and making clear to households that this winter is going to be an exceptional situation, and maybe next winter as well, until we have enough heat pumps and wind power plants installed. So if we can make households help us over this crisis, then in the end, demand and supply they always must balance, and they will balance, and we will be able to meet most of the energy needs. On the electricity, I think we can talk a bit deeper about that.
You mentioned nuclear power in Germany. Now, Germany has idled, it has closed several, both lignite-fired, hard coal-fired plants, as well as nuclear. Do you think discussions will emerge in Germany about reopening these nuclear plants?
The discussions people will bring it into play, like I now discuss about that. And I think the challenge is a bit, we have a lot of options. In the end, we are talking about terawatt hours from very different sources. So do we accept more seismic activity in the Netherlands by producing more terawatt hours of gas in Groningen? Or do we rather want to reduce industrial production in France? Or do we ask Bulgarian households to turn down their thermostats? Or do we want to reopen nuclear power plants in Germany? And if you put all the options together, you can entirely replace Russian gas with that, I presume. But it is a horrible list of things that would come together here, and there needs to be some sort of agreement. What is essentially the merit order of torture here that you want to look into? And I think this is often more political than economic. And some of those decisions are also about long-term commitments, and I think the German nuclear phase-out, of course, economically, keeping these nuclear plants running a bit longer seems a no-brainer. But as a commitment device that Germany really wants to conduct its energy transition and does not want to reopen this debate and wants to have massive investment in renewables quickly, then kind of using this straw that nuclear provides might be exactly the wrong choice. So these discussions are only about to start, and let's see where they will lead.
Certainly some very hard choices ahead, politically as well as economic. But Georg, if we return to the gas market now, and there's been a lot of talk about, both a European as well as a German sort of reserve put in place. What's your view here? Do you think there will be, there'll be obligations on gas suppliers and firms to create that kind of reserve ahead of next winter?
No, I think this discussion is quite mature. We are also going to have an event at the beginning of March with Claude Turmes, that is one of the proponents of those gas reserves. My feeling is that something will come, and I am extremely concerned about national solutions. My feeling is that national solutions might lead to an overbidding competition between different countries for where the gas is going to be stored. And that's only to the benefit of the external suppliers, because if we now start to bid out each other for who gets the gas in his storage, then in the end we are handing out big checks to maybe even to the Russians and to other LNG suppliers, and that could not be in our interest. So we should now coordinate. If demand and supply curve don't match anymore, we are not in a pure market situation anymore, and we need to find ways to coordinate here.
Germany, for example, if we go to LNG, Germany is well connected with the Dutch and Belgian import facilities, and Europe's utilization rates averaged only 38% last year. So you can have all the terminals in the world, but it doesn't make a difference if the boats go elsewhere or prices are higher in another market. So does a German LNG facility make sense in light of those utilization rates?
Yeah, I would think a German LNG facility would make sense. I mean, we have seen that in the end of last year, when the utilization rates of the terminals in Bruegel and elsewhere went up quite substantially, and bringing more gas exactly to that region is what we need. I mean, we don't need more gas in the Iberian Peninsula right now because we're not able to bring it over the Pyrenees. In that sense, having this infrastructure, which would be more like an insurance infrastructure normally than one that is built for being fully utilized for 15 years. I mean, we are not in a situation where we are discussing long-term transition plans. We are one about discussing about the next winters and about insurance. We probably recall this Lithuanian LNG terminal that. As soon as they were there and were available, Gazprom offered a significant discount on its gas price. So creating the strategic alternatives might essentially help you to get access to the gas, even from the incumbent supplier at significantly lower cost.
You mentioned Bulgarians turning down their thermostats potentially, but in Germany, we've seen that the uptake rates of heat pumps and insulation, they're not really the same don't generate the same kind of headlines as, weapons shipments to Ukraine, etc. Now, but ultimately, they do more for European security and independence than some secondhand sort of weaponry, So I think, do you see any movement here? I mean, in Germany, you've seen governments talking about this for decades, but gas consumption in the country is still around where it was in the 1990s. So what's holding Germany back in terms of reducing household gas consumption?
The new government, with its opening balance of the energy ministry, quite clearly pointed out very ambitious plans on both renewables, so 80% in the power mix by 2030, and on heat pumps. I think they said something like 6 million heat pumps by 2030. So that would already be a significant dent in gas consumption. And I mean, in the situation right now, if you want to see it as an opportunity, of course, I mean, I like your comparison of saying, okay, maybe wind turbines and heat pumps are a good alternative to tanks. So maybe going strong on that front will help this long proclaimed energy sovereignty quite a bit.
Georg, Zachmann, thank you very much for joining the Montel Weekly podcast this week. We'll keep a very close eye on the events as they unfold in the Ukraine. Once again, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Richard.
So, listeners, you can now follow the podcast on our own Twitter account, aptly named the Montel Weekly Podcast. Please direct message any suggestions, questions, or, let us know if you think you have a good idea for a guest on the show. You can also send us an email to podcast@montelnews.com. Lastly, remember to keep up to date with all that's happening in energy markets on Montel News. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you and goodbye.